Rugby World Cup game number 5, folks. England taking on Argentina. Certainly one of the biggest games of the round. Potentially sees the team that's going to go through top. I don't know. Pool D is a bit of a tough one to pick. England and Argentina are certainly the two favourites to go through, but there are other teams in that pool, Japan and Samoa, who might have something to say about that. We'll go through the squads, some stats, recent history predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one maybe going to play out. There's a bit of pressure on Steve Borthwick for sure because his team has been underperforming. And there's a lot of kind of good feels about Michael Cheika. He's been smiling ear to ear in his press conferences. He's clearly having a great time. But I mean, his squad's not exactly been setting the world on fire. They did all right in the Rugby Championship without being fantastic. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one to watch on this side of the draw. The recent history between the sides is relatively recent. The last 5 games date back to 2017. England have generally had the wood over the Argentinians, although the blowouts have kind of been pretty few and far between. The last World Cup when Lavanini got that red card is the biggest of the scorelines at 39-10. But like the previous games, you've got 38-34, 35-25. There's a 21-8 there as well. But the one win the Argentinians have got over the English is that most recent one. So that's one that maybe gives a little bit of the edge to Argentina, but it was only a 1-pointer, 30 points to 29 at Twickenham last year. So yeah, there's feels like it's on a knife edge, this one, man. I don't really know how it's going to go. For England, they have picked a relatively stable squad, but it's an interesting one with Steve Borthwick naming his squad so early on in the piece, and then multiple guys getting injuries and suspensions means guys like Jonny May and Alex Mitchell, who were not even in the squad to start with, are starting the first game of the Rugby World Cup. Remember, Van Portfleet out injured means there was a spot opened up for Alex Mitchell, likewise Anthony Watson for Jonny May. So yeah, it seems to make more sense for the Southern Hemisphere teams to pick their squads earlier coming off the back of the Rugby Championship compared to most of the Northern teams who left it a bit later. Ellis, Genge, Jamie George and Dan Cole, that is your front row. So George comes in after not featuring in that last game. I was glad he didn't feature in that last game against Fiji because a guy like Theo, who is on the bench, who's very limited in his international test experience, probably needed a start. But for a game like this, it makes sense to bring Jamie George back. Ellis Genge is certainly one of the more dynamic ball-carrying props. So we look forward to seeing him in a bit of space. And then Dan Cole will be looking to kind of keep things steady at set-piece time. Maro, Itoje, Ollie, Chessum in the second row. That seems to be Steve Borthwick's preferred duo. Maro seems to have been kind of relatively quiet by his own standards in recent times. He's been trying to get over the ball. He's been making a heap of tackles, which is kind of what you expect, but maybe lacking a little bit of that X factor. But largely, England as a team have been underperforming, so maybe it is a bit harder for him as an individual to shine. Courtney Laws is captain in the absence of Owen Farrell, who's still suspended. He's a very capable leader, so there's no reason he can't inspire the team. And also, like Maro, just get over the bloody ball and make heaps of tackles and hopefully pinch some line-out ball from an English point of view. Tom Curry's addition to the squad, or being back in, he was initially named, but he's not had any game time because he's been injured, is a great boon for the side. He's world-class player when he's fit, but he hasn't been fit for a long time. So between Curry, Laws, and Maro Itoje, you've got some absolute dominant tacklers there. And then Ben Earl has kind of been the tackling machine of the guys who has been playing. He's got the highest average tackle rate in recent times for the English players, getting 12 or 13 a game. So a little bit of pressure on him at number 8 in the absence of Billy V to kind of get some good go-forward ball. But certainly defensively, he's been solid. Alex Mitchell at 9, I like that. He's a real nippy halfback who can certainly put a bit of doubt into defenders' minds. And then George Ford at 10 is another guy who's kind of had his career at test level a little bit resurrected, after being out of the England squad for a while. Certainly as a kind of playmaking, guy to put other guys into good positions. There's not that many better than George Ford. Manu Tuilagi and Joe Marchant is your midfield, so a good bit of speed and deception from Marchant, a bit of power from Manu, and then wings Jonny May, Elliot, Daly, and Freddie Steward at the back. Freddie Stewart's great under the high ball. Has been a little bit, not I don't want to say exposed, but he struggles a little bit in those one-on-one last-ditch tackles you'd like him to make as that last line of defence. Often he seems to turn kind of slowly, but it's hard to blame him when it's like if the fullback's having to make a one-on-one last-ditch tackle, things have clearly not gone well with the rest of the team in the build-up. Jonny May in that last game against Fiji scored a cracking try where he got rid of the Fijian winger, but then was also burned for pace on the outside not long later. So, yeah, he's going to have to use that experience more than just the kind of pure gas. And then Elliot, Daly's got a big old boot on him. I expect them to use a bit of that because England do like to kick the ball under Borthwick. Dan, Marler and Stewart, that's your front row replacements. So the props are the same, and Dan down to the bench. George Martin's back into the 23 with Ribbons being injured. Also, there's no Kyle Sinclair because he's also carrying an injury. Lewis Ludlam is there. Danny Kerr, Marcus Smith and Ollie Lawrence. So Lawrence drops to the bench and Smith and Kerr with the same subs on the bench in the Fiji game. You feel like Marcus Smith added a bit of spice to the attack when he came on at fullback. For Argentina, they've not had that much game time. Like, of all the teams who went through the kind of warm-up period and playing as many games as they could, Argentina just played the one game against Spain. And that game against Spain, which I didn't watch, I saw the highlights of it, but they didn't play many of their first-string guys. They played guys who needed game time. So, yeah, it's a strange position to kind of know what form a lot of these guys will be in, seeing as they have not played a game in anger for quite some time. Like I said, the Rugby Championship was solid without being spectacular from the Argentinians. They didn't come last, but they came third out of 4 teams. So, take that kind of for what it's worth. They have brought back Gajo and Montoya, 2 of their front rowers who are their first choice guys. Gajo and Genge playing in the same game is phenomenal news because those loose heads both love a carry. See who gets more run meters between those 2 guys. I would back Gajo to get more defenders beaten, but maybe Genge to get more run meters. We'll have to see. Montoya is a great breakdown guy, and then Cordella, similar to Dan Cole's role, is just there to scrummage and not a lot else. To be honest, set piece is going to be his bag. Emiliano comes into the starting 15 after being on the bench against Spain. Lavanini didn't play against Spain. He's back into the 23. He's been in great form. He's been tackling the house down for Argentina, and he's been keeping his nose very clean. There's an Air Force plane flying over my house. Passenger planes don't fly that low. Matera is there at number 6. He has been in devastating form for Argentina in the Rugby Championship. He was Argentina's top tackler. He was the top ball carrier of the Rugby Championship. He had more defenders beaten than any player in Argentina's squad for the Rugby Championship. He is like a one-man army. Speaking of kind of military stuff, he's phenomenal. He's absolutely phenomenal. If he has a good game, that automatically puts Argentina one step closer to getting a result. And then Kremer, who we didn't see feature in the Rugby Championship due to suspension from his club level, did manage to get through a game against Spain. And if he can keep his discipline, you feel like between him and Lavanini with the defensive shifts, and then Matera as well, Montoya as well, these guys are all tackling machines, they will help keep the English attack quiet. Remember, the English attack has not been that flash. So, you feel like this is one where maybe the defenses cancel out the attacks. Juan Martin Gonzalez, though, is a little bit more of an excitement machine guy. Great at line-out time as well. Very, very dangerous guy. You got to watch him. And then Bertrano and Carreras, the first choice 9-10, are back after not playing against Spain. Carreras, plays a bit outside back. English fans will be familiar with him from the Premiership. And he's not going to have to worry about the goal kicking because Boffelli is on the side. Mateo Carreras is not relative, as far as I'm aware. He's on the left wing. Boffelli's on the right. As I said, Boffelli will be doing the goal kicking, I would say. Goal kicking's been fine for Argentina without being phenomenal. It's in the kind of 70s. So not quite as high as some of the other teams who are in the 80s, but certainly better than the likes of Australia and Japan. Midfield is Santiago Chocobares and Lucio Cinti. Cinti's been in kind of, I want to say, career-best form for Argentina. Been a little bit doubtful of him, but he's actually been getting some good go-forward ball. And then Mallia is there at fullback. So, yeah, it's a lot of guys who didn't play in the Spanish game who are back for this one. Crevis dropping to the bench alongside Sclavi and Bejo, who all started against Spain. Petty, likewise. Rubiolo, likewise. Bruno as well. And then Bazan Valles is there as your halfback replacement alongside Moroni. So just the 2 back replacements. It's a 6-2 split. Remembering Moroni can cover essentially half of the back line. Stats-wise, neither of these teams has been that flash attacking. Like, they're not scoring a lot of tries. Yeah, that's why I feel like the 2 defenses could could maybe cancel out each other. Obviously, the Spain game ups the try rate for Argentina, but if you're looking at the games against teams of a similar standing, Argentina's not been scoring a heck of a lot of tries, but both these sides may be quite happy just to keep the scoreboard ticking over with the boot. Argentina have been getting more defenders beaten from England. If you're looking for a little bit more X factor, England have been putting a little bit more boot to ball. Both sides have got good lineouts. Both sides have got pretty decent goal kicking percentages, like I mentioned. Interestingly, Argentina's worst 20 minutes is the first quarter. That's when they concede their most points and score their fewest. Whereas England are kind of on the flip side, at least in terms of conceding points. They concede the most of their points in that final quarter. So you can feel like maybe if the scorelines are close into the final 20, maybe that gives Argentina a little bit of an advantage. How do the bookies and whatnot have this one? Well, pretty much it evens. England are like half-point favourites, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm says England by 2. So really not much in it. It is on from Marseille. It's on at 9 o'clock, which is the best time for those of us in New Zealand because that makes it a nice 7 o'clock in the morning. How can these sides handle the heat? Is also going to be a factor because it does seem pretty hot in France right now. England Rugby Store, if you want England Rugby gear, I'll put a link down in the description. Subscribe to the channel, folks. More Rugby World Cup previews and reviews coming your way. Take care of yourselves and talk to you again soon.